It is a glorious day. We have been in a series called Strappin on the Old Feed Bag. And we've been talking about how Jesus taught lessons around a meal table. And today, we're going to be looking at the last sermon in the series. How many of you have seen these before? Gift cards? We can tell who's young. Gift cards. Some of you have given me gift cards and my family gift cards for Pastor Appreciation Month and for Christmas, and we really appreciate those. You may give them to other people, or maybe you've received a gift card. Maybe it's to go to the movies, or a gift card to go out to eat to some place like Red Lobster or the Cheesecake Factory. But gift cards are a wonderful gift to give. Gift cards have become increasingly popular in this country. In America, listen to this. I was astounded at this statistic. In America, 97 billion, not M with a million with an M, but B with a billion. $97 billion is spent on gift cards each year. Gift cards have a money value that has already been paid. You've already paid it, you give the card, and they can cash it in. But their value can only be unlocked when the card is used. So in other words, if you have the card and you never use it, it's not worth the plastic it's printed on. You've got to use it. In fact, listen to this. This is astounding. Every year, out of that $97 billion in gift cards that are purchased, $8 million worth of gift cards go unused. They get stuck in a drawer someplace. They get lost between the seats of your couch or down in between the console in your car. Today, we celebrate Easter, the greatest holiday that we have. Yes, Christmas is one of my favorite holidays, but Easter is the one that gives meaning to Christmas. This is why Christmas happened. This is why Jesus came. Easter is a celebration of a gift that has been made available to each one of us. It's a gift that has already been paid for, just like that gift card. Christ's resurrection allows us a passageway, a hope that we can conquer the grave and spend eternity in heaven with Him. He's given us a priceless gift card through His death and resurrection. But the tragedy is that just like people that receive a gift card and never use it, never cash it in, so it is with many people when it comes to the gift card of Christ's gift to us. Forgiveness, eternal life, hope, and peace. Today I want to look at the life of an individual in the Bible, one that we know quite a bit about because he wrote part of the Bible. A lot of the book of Acts talks about him and his ministry. He is a character in the Bible that some of you can relate to. He's a man who came from humble beginnings. He met the Lord. He gave up his business. He gave up a lot to follow Jesus. He was one who would always say, "Yes, Lord, I'll do it." He'd be the first to jump in, or in some cases, jump out in order to follow Christ. He was the first one that would open his mouth and insert his foot. We're going to be looking at Simon Peter today. Simon Peter. He is the one that preached on the day of Pentecost, the one who helped establish the church. He is one who gave his life for the cause of Christ, as tradition states. And he is the one that Jesus told that upon this rock I will build my church. Simon was formerly a fisherman on the Sea of Galilee. So I want to look at some of the actions of Simon Peter, as point 1 in the bulletin insert says. Simon Peter's action is what we're going to look at first. As a former fisherman on the Sea of Galilee, he had a prosperous business. He began going out on the waters, casting nets, pulling them up, and making money. That was his livelihood. He was a good old boy, a blue-collar worker at the Sea of Galilee. That area of the country up in Galilee, some of you would feel right at home there, because that's where... Anybody here from West Virginia originally? Anybody have family in West Virginia or down... Oh man, there's half. How about in southern Ohio and West Virginia? Okay, I'm from southern Ohio, so all we are down in Cadiz and all along the Ohio River, all the way down to Cincinnati or Ashland, Kentucky, across from there. All of southern Ohio is West Virginia just slid across the river. Okay, that's all we are. You know, we're just glorified hicks. Okay? So if you're that, you and Peter would be like this, man, because the Sea of Galilee and up in Nazareth and all of that area, that was the West Virginia of Israel. It was the Appalachia of that area. Just common, good old boys. I don't know if they chewed tobacco there, but I'm sure Peter'd have a chaw in his mouth and say, "Yeah, John, let's cast over on this side." That's the type of guy Peter was. He was the guy, if they had guns, he'd be toting one. He was the guy that would jump in and do, and he was quick to follow something he believed in, stood up for what he believed in, fought with his fists many times when he should sit back and use his words. Peter, a man of action. Jesus brought forth a new passion in this man and a focus to Simon's life. Instead of being a fisherman, Jesus called him to become a fisher of men. In fact, Peter changed Simon's name to Peter. Now, that wasn't his real name, Peter. That was a nickname, but that's what we know him by. The word Peter is a play on words. The word Peter comes from the Greek word Petra, which means rock or stone. So when Jesus calls Simon Peter, he's calling him Simon the Rock. Now you'd think that'd be great to be a rock. But that name was true only part of the time. Sometimes that word rock, the way Jesus used it with Peter, is kind of like you would call somebody that has a whole lot of hair baldy. Or somebody that's fat, you'd call them skinny or string bean or something like that. It was a sarcastic thing that they would say to do the opposite of what they meant. But Peter was passionate about anything he did. He was passionate about following Jesus. In fact, it is evident from the Gospels that Peter desired to be a spiritual leader. He really wanted that. He really wanted that. But sometimes he lacked the ability. However, his passion and future as a spiritual leader for God seemed to all come crashing down the hours before Jesus was crucified. You see, during the Last Supper, Jesus said that someone was going to betray him. And everybody there was asking, "Is it I? Is it I?" And Peter said, Lord, I never would betray you. And Jesus says, not only will you do it, but you're going to do it 3 times before the cock crows. And Peter's like, oh, no way, Jesus, I would never do that. I'm committed to you, man. But as Jesus was being taken after he was betrayed in the garden, from one place to another, from Pilate to King Herod, to the Sanhedrin, to King Herod, to Pilate, Peter is waiting outside. And he's standing out there around a fire, and there's other people standing around and sitting. And Jesus is getting ready to be led right past where Peter was. And there were some people there, and they looked at Peter and they said, you're one of Jesus' followers, aren't you? And he said, oh no, I'm not one of his followers. You've got me confused with somebody else. And then somebody else chimes in, well, yes, I've seen you with Jesus. You're one of them. And he more emphatically says, you're nuts. I'm not one of them. Just leave me alone. And then finally, a young woman says, you've got to be one of his followers. You even talk like they do. You know, you can always tell a West Virginian by the way they talk. And then more emphatically, even to the point of swearing, he tells the person, I don't know the guy. And at that moment, Jesus comes walking across that courtyard, and his eyes and Peter's eyes meet. And he hears in the background, and he realizes that what Jesus said was going to happen did happen. He had fallen. He had denied Christ 3 times, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times within just a few minutes. And he was devastated. The guilt that he felt, the pain in his heart that he experienced. Peter, who possessed an outspoken personality, spoke up and denied Christ. It tells us in Luke chapter 22, verse 62, after he denies Christ, he runs into the darkness. And I like the way it says in the Message. It says about Peter as he runs into the darkness after he betrays Christ, it says he cried and he cried and he cried. Do you think the writer of Luke is trying to get a point across? This tore Peter up. He realized he had denied his friend, his master, and that he wasn't worthy. And it broke his heart. Now, Peter could have just left and given up altogether like some people do. Have you ever done something wrong and it really hurt after you really stopped to realize what you'd done? Some people have done that, and rather than face up to it and deal with it, they just hold it in, and they try to handle it on their own, or they try to push it aside and forget about it. But that's not what Peter did. This would be Peter's greatest failure and most disappointing moment of his life. But 3 days later, the disciple discovered the empty tomb, and they're then met by the risen Lord Jesus. However, for Peter, there still must have been, even after seeing Jesus alive again, an enormous sense of guilt and shame for his actions just days prior. We're given a glimpse into how Jesus handled this, though. How Jesus dealt with Peter and his actions. As we now look at point 2 in our message, Jesus' reaction. How did Jesus respond? Well, if you read John chapter 21, which we're not going to read that today because it's lengthy, but we'll see what happens. Peter and some of the other disciples returned to the Sea of Galilee to go fishing. They'd been fishing all night long, but had not caught any fish. Any of you guys fishermen out there? You ever go fishing and don't catch anything? Ever stay out all night fishing and not catch anything? Isn't that fun? Why? My brother, both my brothers, my dad were fishermen. They could go out and sit there all day long and not even get a nibble, and they were happy. Me, that drives me nuts. If they're not biting, I'm not catching, I'm leaving. I am not patient enough. I feel like I'm wasting time when I just sit there. But they had the right idea because they can accomplish 2 things. One, they can just sit out in God's nature and enjoy and relax. And the other thing is they got away from my sister-in-laws and my mother for a while. It was a time of peace and serenity. Well, they're out here and they're not doing it for pleasure. They're out here fishing for business. They're fishing for food. And they're not catching anything. A man on shore sees them out there and he calls out to them and he says, "Cast your nets on the right side of the boat." Like, what difference is that going to make? They've been out here all night. They've done on both sides and nothing's happened. But not going to hurt. So they cast their nets on the right side of the boat and they end up pulling up 153 fish. A miracle! And Peter realizes as he looks again and he thinks of the voice that he's just heard, it's familiar, and he looks over across the sea and he looks at that guy and he goes, "That's Jesus!" And Peter, in common fashion, rather than waiting to row in, he jumps out of the boat and swims to shore. He gets there and he realizes that this really is Jesus. Jesus has gone from corpse to cook. When he got to the shore, Jesus was preparing a meal over a charcoal fire. And Jesus welcomes Peter, doesn't seem to hold a grudge or anything, as if nothing had happened. He didn't look at Peter and say, "I told you so. I told you what you were going to do." He doesn't do that. He takes Peter and takes him aside and he asks him a question. He says, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Okay. And then he looks at Peter again and he says, "Peter, do you really love me?" And Peter, "Well, yes, Lord, I told you I did. Of course I love you." Then he says again, "Peter, do you really, really love me?" And Peter's getting a little hurt and annoyed by this because he's already told Jesus twice he loves him and he really loves him. And now he's asking, "Do you really, really love me?" And he says, "Yes, Lord, you know I really, really love you." And he says, "Then go feed my sheep." In other words, what he was telling him is, go share the good news. Share the story. Share what's happened here today and what's happened in the past. Share my life with other people. And Jesus was letting Peter know with his questions and his answers that he is not defined. He's not defined by his past mistakes. Isn't that wonderful to know that we don't have to be defined by our past mistakes? Have any of you ever made a mistake in your life? What's some things you've done that were mistakes? Nobody wants to say. What mistakes have you made? Oh, don't be afraid. We're all in the same boat together. I'm sure you say something. The person next to you's got something worse.
Bad relationship.
A bad relationship. Drinking.
Speaking without thinking.
I'm not going to say a word. What else? Maybe you've lied. Maybe you've cheated on somebody. Maybe you've stolen something. Maybe you have a sexual sin. Maybe it's drugs, pornography. It can be anything. How would you like to be known for that one action the rest of your life? Oh, yeah. Dean Johnson. He's the drunk. Oh, Renee Butcher. She's the gossip. Because everybody knows she talks all the time.
Yeah, right.
How would you like to be known for your worst sin? That's how you'd be labeled. Renee the gossip. Terry the liar. Desmond the thief. Well, he is a used car salesman. But he's not a lawyer. How would you like to be known for that one thing that you did? See, Jesus had every right, being God's Son, to have pointed that sin out to Peter. You denied God. You betrayed the Son of God. But what does he do? He forgives him. He lets it go. And folks, that is what the cross and the resurrection mean to you and me. We aren't defined by our sin anymore. We're not defined by who we used to be, how bad we used to be. Jesus sees you as someone worth dying for. He sees you as someone that he loves, that he looks at as his little brother, his little sister. He looks at you with the same affection that your family looks at you. Jesus looked at Peter that day, and he did not bring up the past. Because you see, Jesus' death and resurrection changes everything. Sometimes we say, well, I'll start going to church more, or I'll become a Christian. I'll give my life to Christ as soon as I stop doing this, as soon as I stop drinking, as soon as I stop swearing, as soon as I stop smoking, as soon as I get my relationship with my spouse worked out, as soon as I become a good person. Well, let me tell you something, folks. You're never going to do any of those things to completion without His help. And He accepts you, just like the song we sing, just as I am. He accepts you just as you are. That doesn't mean He wants you to stay the way you are. He wants you to accept Him and follow Him and become more like Him. But He loves you. and He can look past our past and our sin because He cares. Think about it, folks. If He didn't love you, if He didn't care about you, would He have left a paradise in heaven to come and live in the armpit of Israel for 33 years? Would He have left all of that to come and live in poverty here? Would He have come here and been subjected to the ridicule and the persecution that He received when in heaven He was receiving worship and glory? If He didn't love you, do you think He would have gone through the beating and the humiliation and the crucifixion if He didn't love you? He loves you. And He wants you to be a part of His family. He wants you to accept Him. He wants you to be a part of a church where you can be a part of that family. Just like our parents love to see us come and visit, He loves to see us walk in through these doors. He loves to see us. Because this, in a sense, every Sunday is a family reunion. Jesus wants that. And Jesus deserves that because of what He has done. And just as it was not too late for Peter, it's not too late for any of us. No one has done too much wrong or made too many mistakes for Jesus to forgive. I don't care what you have done, He can and will forgive you if you come to Him sorry for what you've done. If you are truly sorry for what you have done, He will forgive and forget. The price has already been paid for our sin and our mistakes. It was paid on the cross by Him. You see, folks, the gift card has been laid out there and given to you. Question is, are you going to accept it? And are you going to use it? The only way you can use it is to give your life to Him and follow Him. That's how you get the gift card redeemed. That's how you're able to enjoy the gift that He's given, the gift of forgiveness, the gift of eternal life, the gift of hope for the future. Last year, $8 billion of unused gift cards. What a waste. But a greater waste is Jesus giving you all of the things that I just mentioned and you not using it. As our worship team comes, we want to give you the opportunity to accept the gift, to give your life to Jesus as He gave His life for you. So no matter how great your sin or your hurt or your disappointment, the gift of grace and forgiveness in Jesus can cover the cost. Don't you want to take advantage of that today if you haven't already?